Here stands a curious paradox. We live in an age of unprecedented connection, yet isolation plagues the human spirit more than ever. From my vantage point in Chelsea, where I once walked gardens contemplating the nature of ideal societies, I observe how these glowing screens that promise to unite humanity often divide us from our very selves. The digital realm, much like the New World discoveries of my time, presents both extraordinary promise and perilous temptation. Yet the fundamental questions remain unchanged. How do we preserve our humanity when efficiency threatens to eclipse wisdom? How do we maintain authentic community when virtual networks replace genuine fellowship? How do we pursue truth when information overwhelms understanding? These challenges that seem so modern echo the same tensions I witnessed between humanist ideals and pragmatic power. Today, we shall explore how perennial wisdom can guide us through this digital labyrinth, helping us harness technology's gifts while safeguarding what makes us most deeply human. Chapter 1: The Paradox of Connection Without Community. The great irony of our digital age mirrors what I observed in my own time when the printing press promised to democratize knowledge, yet often amplified discord rather than understanding. Today's technology connects us to millions, yet many feel more alone than ever. This is not mere nostalgic sentiment, but a recognition of human nature itself. True community requires what I called in my correspondence from the tower, the commerce of minds and hearts. This commerce demands presence, not merely physical proximity, but the deliberate attention we give to another's well-being. When we reduce human interaction to rapid exchanges of text and images, we risk losing the depth that nourishes the soul. Consider how digital platforms encourage us to present curated versions of ourselves, much like courtiers who don their finest masks for royal audiences. Yet authentic community requires vulnerability, the courage to be known in our struggles as well as our triumphs. The biblical wisdom that iron sharpens iron occurs through friction, through the patient work of understanding another's perspective even when it challenges our own. The solution is not to abandon these tools, but to use them as instruments of genuine service rather than self-promotion. When I served as Lord Chancellor, I learned that true authority comes not from the power to command, but from the commitment to understand. Digital communication can serve this end when we approach it with the same reverence we bring to face-to-face conversation. We must resist the temptation to mistake information for wisdom, or virtual presence for genuine companionship. The screen can connect us across vast distances, but it cannot replace the irreplaceable gift of being fully present to another human being. This requires the discipline to put down our devices regularly, to engage in the patient work of listening, and to remember that behind every profile lies a soul created in the image of God, deserving of our full attention and care. Digital community flourishes when it serves to deepen rather than replace our embodied relationships, when it helps us organize acts of service rather than merely exchange opinions, and when it reminds us of our shared humanity rather than amplifying our differences. Chapter 2: Reclaiming Contemplation in an Age of Distraction. In my dialogue of comfort, written during those final months in the tower, I discovered that external constraints often liberate the mind for deeper reflection. Today's digital age presents the opposite challenge: unlimited external stimulation that can imprison the mind in perpetual distraction. The very devices designed to serve us often become our masters, demanding constant attention and fragmenting our capacity for sustained thought. The contemplative tradition I inherited from medieval monasticism teaches that wisdom emerges not from consuming more information, but from deeply digesting what we already know. Saint Augustine reminded us that, in you, O Lord, we find our rest, yet we often seek that rest in the endless scroll of digital feeds that promise satisfaction but deliver only exhaustion. True contemplation requires what the ancients called custody of the eyes, the disciplined choice about where we direct our attention. In a world designed to capture and monetize our focus, this becomes an act of spiritual resistance. Every notification competes for the mental space needed for reflection, prayer, and genuine encounter with truth. The practice of Lectio Divina, the slow, meditative reading of sacred texts, offers a powerful antidote to our age of skimming and scanning. When we approach any worthy text with this reverence, whether scripture, philosophy, or poetry, we allow words to penetrate beyond the surface of the mind into the depths where wisdom takes root. I recommend establishing what medieval monks called the cell, a space and time protected from digital intrusion where the soul can expand rather than contract. This might be the first hour of morning before checking messages, or evening walks without devices, or simply sitting in silence long enough for the mind's chatter to settle. The goal is not to become Luddites, but to become masters of our tools rather than their slaves. When we approach technology from this grounded center, we can use it to enhance rather than replace contemplation. We might listen to sacred music, access scholarly resources, or connect with distant friends for meaningful conversation. But these activities flow from rather than substitute for the deeper work of interior cultivation that makes us fully human. Chapter 3: The Dignity of Work in an Automated World. In Utopia, I envisioned a society where technology serves human flourishing rather than replacing human purpose. The citizens of my imagined island used their tools to reduce drudgery, but they understood that meaningful work remains essential to human dignity. Today's automation presents similar opportunities and dangers, threatening to create a world where efficiency triumphs over purpose, where productivity is measured only in economic terms rather than human development. The Christian humanist tradition teaches that work participates in God's ongoing creation. When Adam was placed in Eden, it was not for idle leisure but to till and keep the garden. This calling to cultivation of land, mind, relationships, and community cannot be outsourced to algorithms without diminishing our humanity. Yet we need not fear technological advancement when it's ordered toward authentic human goods. The challenge lies in distinguishing between work that develops human capacities and mere busy work that fills time without adding meaning. A craftsman who uses power tools to create beautiful furniture exercises the same fundamental creativity as one who works entirely by hand, but someone whose work consists solely of monitoring automated processes may find their human faculties atrophying from disuse. We must insist that automation serve the common good rather than merely private profit. In my utopian vision, reduced working hours led to increased education, artistic creation, and community participation. Technology freed citizens for philosophy, music, gardening, and the cultivation of virtue. This remains a viable goal if we choose to organize our economy around human development rather than mere accumulation. The dignity of work also requires that we resist the gig economy's tendency to reduce workers to isolated units competing against each other. True prosperity emerges from collaboration, from the web of relationships that bind communities together. Even in our digital age, we need structures that foster solidarity rather than atomization. Education becomes crucial here. We must prepare people not just for specific jobs that may be automated away, but for the lifelong learning that helps them adapt and grow. This means cultivating curiosity, critical thinking, and the ability to synthesize knowledge across disciplines, the very skills that humanist education has always promoted. Most importantly, we must remember that human value doesn't depend solely on economic productivity. The elderly, the disabled, children, and those between jobs all possess inherent dignity that no algorithm can calculate. A truly human economy recognizes this dignity by ensuring that technological progress serves the flourishing of all members of society, not just the most economically productive. Chapter 4: Truth and Falsehood in the Information Age. During my controversies with Protestant reformers, I learned that the proliferation of information does not automatically advance truth. When printing presses multiplied competing religious texts, many sincere souls found themselves more confused rather than enlightened. Today's digital explosion of information presents similar challenges. How do we distinguish truth from falsehood when anyone can publish anything? How do we maintain standards of evidence and reasoning when emotion often spreads faster than analysis? The classical education I received taught me to approach claims with what we called prudent skepticism, neither gullible acceptance nor cynical dismissal, but careful evaluation based on evidence, logic, and wisdom accumulated over centuries. This skill becomes essential when algorithms designed to capture attention often amplify the sensational over the substantive, the inflammatory over the illuminating. Truth-seeking requires both intellectual humility and moral courage. Humility to admit when we lack sufficient knowledge to form firm opinions, courage to defend truths we've carefully verified even when they prove unpopular. My own experience defending Catholic teaching against popular reform movements taught me that truth often requires swimming against cultural currents. The digital age's democratization of information brings genuine benefits: access to scholarship once confined to elite institutions, voices from marginalized communities, rapid correction of errors. Yet it also enables the weaponization of information, where data is selected and presented not to illuminate but to persuade, not to seek truth but to advance agendas. We need what I might call digital prudence, the wisdom to navigate this sea of information without drowning in it. This includes learning to trace claims to their sources, understanding how confirmation bias shapes what algorithms show us, and cultivating relationships with people who challenge our assumptions respectfully. The Church's ancient tradition of careful scriptural interpretation offers valuable guidance here. We learn to distinguish between the clear teaching of essential truths and the more speculative interpretation of complex passages. Similarly, we must learn to distinguish between well-established facts and provisional theories, between broad consensus and fringe opinions, between expertise earned through study and authority claimed through assertion. Perhaps most importantly, we must remember that truth is not merely an intellectual exercise but a moral commitment. In my final imprisonment, I chose truth over comfort, principle over pragmatism, eternal perspective over temporal advantage. The digital age tests this same commitment daily. Will we seek truth even when lies prove more convenient? Will we correct our errors even when admitting them proves embarrassing? Will we engage charitably with those who disagree rather than dismissing them as enemies? The pursuit of truth in our age requires both ancient wisdom and new skills, both technological literacy and spiritual discernment, both rational analysis and moral integrity. Chapter 5: Rediscovering Sabbath Rest in a 24/7 World. The biblical commandment to observe the Sabbath reveals profound wisdom about human nature that our always connected age desperately needs to rediscover. When God rested on the seventh day, it was not from exhaustion but to establish a rhythm essential to created life. This pattern of work and rest, engagement and withdrawal, productivity and contemplation, mirrors the very heartbeat of existence itself. Our digital devices recognize no such boundaries. They demand attention at all hours, blur the lines between work and leisure, and create the illusion that constant availability equals greater service to others. Yet this violation of natural rhythms diminishes rather than enhances our capacity for genuine contribution. The person who never rests eventually has nothing of substance to offer during working hours. In my correspondence with my daughter Margaret, I often reflected on the importance of creating spaces for family intimacy that public duties could not penetrate. These protected times, evening prayers, shared meals, leisurely conversations, nourished relationships that sustained me through later trials. Today's families need similar protection from the tyranny of constant connectivity. The practice of Sabbath is not mere religious observance but recognition of human limitation and divine abundance. When we cease our frantic efforts to control outcomes, we create space for deeper gifts, rest that restores rather than merely entertains, relationships that nourish rather than drain, silence that speaks more powerfully than noise. This doesn't require abandoning technology entirely, but using it intentionally rather than compulsively. Perhaps one day each week we power down devices except for true emergencies. Perhaps we establish device-free hours for family meals and meaningful conversation. Perhaps we rediscover the pleasure of reading physical books, taking walks without podcasts, or simply sitting in silence long enough for our souls to catch up with our bodies. The resistance to this discipline often reveals how enslaved we've become to digital stimulation. The anxiety many feel when separated from their phones for even short periods suggests that our relationship with technology has become addictive rather than beneficial. Like any addiction, it promises satisfaction but delivers only increased craving. Sabbath observance also cultivates gratitude by reminding us that our worth doesn't depend on constant productivity. We can rest because our value derives from being created in God's image, not from our ability to generate wealth or accumulate achievements. This perspective frees us from the exhausting effort to justify our existence through endless activity. When we honor the rhythm of rest, our work becomes more focused and effective. The mind that regularly disengages from immediate pressures often returns with creative solutions that eluded us during periods of intense concentration. The relationships that receive unhurried attention become sources of strength rather than additional demands. Chapter 6: Virtue Ethics for the Virtual World. The cardinal virtues, prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance, that guided moral reasoning in my era prove remarkably relevant to navigating digital ethics. These virtues, developed through centuries of human experience, provide stable guidelines for decisions that our rapidly changing technology presents daily. Unlike rigid rules that quickly become obsolete, virtues adapt to new circumstances while maintaining their essential wisdom. Prudence, the virtue that governs practical decision-making, becomes crucial when determining how much screen time serves genuine good versus mere entertainment. The prudent person asks not, "What can I do?" but "What should I do?" They consider long-term consequences rather than immediate gratification, choosing digital activities that contribute to human flourishing rather than mere distraction. Digital justice requires us to consider how our online actions affect others, not just immediate recipients of our messages, but broader communities impacted by the information we share. Before posting that inflammatory article or repeating that unverified claim, justice asks, will this contribute to truth and understanding, or merely add to confusion and division? Justice also demands that we protect the privacy and dignity of others, especially those who cannot protect themselves. Fortitude enables us to resist the social pressure that digital platforms often amplify. The courage to express unpopular truths respectfully, to defend the vulnerable against online harassment, to maintain our principles when algorithms reward conformity to prevailing trends, these require the same moral backbone that saints and heroes have always needed. Fortitude also includes the strength to disconnect when technology becomes harmful to our spiritual or psychological health. Temperance, perhaps the most immediately relevant virtue for our digital age, governs our relationship with pleasure and consumption. The same companies that design addictive foods also engineer addictive apps, using psychological research to capture and hold our attention. Temperance helps us enjoy technology's genuine benefits without becoming enslaved to its artificial stimulations. The cultivation of virtue requires what Aristotle called habituation, the gradual formation of character through repeated good choices. This applies directly to our digital habits. Each time we choose meaningful conversation over mindless scrolling, each time we verify information before sharing it, each time we respond to disagreement with charity rather than hostility, we strengthen the moral muscles needed for ethical living. The virtual world also presents new opportunities for practicing traditional virtues. We can exercise generosity by sharing knowledge freely, show compassion by supporting those who struggle, Demonstrate wisdom by helping others navigate complex information landscapes. Digital platforms can amplify virtue just as easily as vice, but this requires conscious intention and persistent effort. The key insight from virtue ethics is that character matters more than rules. A person of good character will find ways to act ethically even in unprecedented situations, while someone focused only on following rules will struggle when those rules don't cover new circumstances. As technology continues evolving faster than our ability to regulate it, the cultivation of virtue becomes more essential than ever. Chapter 7: Building Digital Communities That Serve Human Flourishing. In designing utopia, I learned that ideal societies require more than good intentions. They need structures that encourage virtue and discourage vice, that protect the vulnerable while enabling the talented to flourish, that balance individual freedom with communal responsibility. These same principles apply to the digital communities we're creating, often without realizing we're engaged in social architecture as significant as any urban planning. The design of digital platforms profoundly shapes human behavior. Algorithms that reward outrage over thoughtfulness create communities characterized by conflict rather than collaboration. Systems that measure success only by engagement metrics rather than human well-being produce environments that profit from addiction rather than serving authentic human needs. We must demand better from those who shape our digital infrastructure. True digital community requires what I advocated in all my social reforms: structures that serve the common good rather than merely private interest. This means platforms designed to facilitate genuine dialogue rather than mere broadcasting, systems that protect user privacy rather than exploiting personal data, algorithms that promote truth and beauty rather than whatever captures attention most effectively. The principle of subsidiarity, handling matters at the most local level capable of addressing them effectively, applies beautifully to digital community building. While global platforms enable worldwide connection, much of our digital life should focus on strengthening local relationships and addressing community needs. Technology serves human flourishing best when it helps neighbors know each other better, when it organizes mutual aid, when it preserves and shares local history and culture. Digital literacy becomes a form of civic duty, like the education and governance that utopian citizens received. We need citizens capable of recognizing manipulation, evaluating sources, understanding how their data is used, and participating thoughtfully in online discourse. This education must begin early and continue throughout life as technology evolves. The protection of vulnerable members, children, elderly, those with mental health challenges, requires special attention in digital spaces. Just as we don't allow children to drive cars or purchase alcohol, we need age-appropriate boundaries for technology use. The infinite scroll designed to capture adult attention can prove devastating to developing minds that lack the experience to resist sophisticated manipulation. We must also address digital inequality with the same moral urgency I brought to economic justice. When essential services move online, those without reliable internet access or digital skills become excluded from full participation in society. This violates the principle that all people deserve opportunity to develop their God-given talents and contribute to community well-being. Perhaps most importantly, we need digital spaces that encourage the best in human nature rather than amplifying our worst impulses. This means platforms that reward collaborative problem-solving over competitive point scoring, that celebrate genuine achievement over manufactured celebrity, that facilitate acts of service rather than mere consumption of entertainment. The monasteries of my era preserved learning and culture through society's darkest periods by maintaining communities dedicated to higher purposes than immediate gratification. We need similar dedication to creating digital spaces that serve truth, beauty, goodness, and justice, the eternal values that make life worth living and societies worth preserving. Conclusion. The digital age presents us with choices that will echo through generations. Will we use these powerful tools to enhance human dignity or diminish it? Will we create virtual communities that strengthen our bonds with one another and with truth itself? Or will we allow technology to fragment us into isolated consumers of artificial experiences? The answers depend not on the technology itself, but on the wisdom and virtue we bring to its use. From my vantage point, having witnessed how the printing press both elevated and degraded public discourse, I see familiar patterns in our digital revolution. The same technologies that can spread wisdom across the globe can also multiply folly at the speed of light. The difference lies in our commitment to the perennial values that make us fully human: truth over convenience, community over isolation, service over self-interest, contemplation over mere activity. The path forward requires both ancient wisdom and new skills, both spiritual discernment and technological literacy. We must become gardeners of our digital environment, cultivating spaces where virtue can flourish while weeding out influences that diminish our humanity. This is not merely personal discipline but a form of social responsibility, recognizing that the digital commons we create together will shape the character of future generations. Choose wisely, for the stakes could not be higher.